Well, welcome to the Digital State Podcast, episode 2. And I'm really delighted, I said that we're going to be speaking to Emma Jones, who is the Small Business Commissioner. I've been talking to her, known her for a long time. We got to know each other when I was Business Minister during COVID, when she was the founder of Enterprise Nation, supporting loads of entrepreneurs, small businesses through those times, but also how to get access to finance and digital technology. I'm delighted that she's Small Business Commission, which obviously comes into your purview as a small business runner.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Enterprise Nation, even as an organisation running a small business, it was a fantastic initiative because we did receive lots of information over that time, and we still do. They do quite a few events online, and for a small business, I think not just having access to, let's say, contracts, but access to information to be able to read where you want to go, especially working in the public sector space where we are predominantly working in ourselves as Mayfair IT. Fantastic organisation.
No,
Yes, it's delightful to have Emma here.
Well, that's good because, I mean, look, one thing I found out when I was Minister for Small Business, and I'd run small businesses for 25 years, I know it will never catch on, someone actually, having had experience in the role that they end up in government, but it worked at the time. And what I found was exactly what I discovered as a small business person. That first of all, it's all about cash. It's about access to cash. It's about cash flow. It's about making sure you get paid on time.
That's right.
Hence the conversation that we're just about to have. And then it's actually about procurement, which is actually one of the big key areas of Digital State Podcast, isn't it? Because we're working with primes, we're working with government, and we want to explore with Emma really how that is going to work and how it can work better.
Yeah, certainly. But I think late payments is a huge area for us to talk about. Every SME faces that challenge at some time over another. And I mean, that's through your growth, year 1, 5, 10, and possibly even beyond, because you will be scaling during that time and more cash needs to be plugged in.
If you scale too quickly and you don't get the cash flow, then that's
right. That's
recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Certainly.
Well, look, without further ado, let's get on and introduce our fantastic guest, Emma. It's so lovely to see you. Emma Jones CBE, who has been rightly honoured for your role supporting businesses over many, many years. Now, you started off, I think, just working on inward investment for Arthur Anderson, I think it was, and bringing investment into this country. Something else, if we don't get to talk about it now, we'll talk about it another time, because that's so important for this country at the moment to encourage growth. But then, obviously, Enterprise Nation, all that time that we've just been speaking about, supporting small businesses, starting up, scaling up, and now Small Business Commissioner. Now, I appointed your predecessor, Liz Barclay, who did a great job, and I'm delighted to see a friendly, familiar, effective face in that role now as well. And so, welcome. And first of all, can you just tell us about Small Business Commissioner and what it is, how you're going about the role?
I would love to, and thank you so much to you, Paul, and of course to you, Asad. So thanks so much for having me on. Also delightful to hear you talk about Enterprise Nation. So as you say, that was my former business where not only did we hopefully help support small businesses to start and grow, but of course I had the late payment issue myself as a business owner. So I kind of came into the role of Small Business Commissioner, having lived and breathed it. So I've kind of been there chasing the invoices and questioning why as a small business were we cash flowing some very large corporations. So yes, the role of Small Business Commissioner, I started in role in June 2025. It is a role that is very focused on prompt payment. So it's really interesting that already we've started to talk about late payment. I much prefer using the term prompt payment because, of course, it's interesting. People's psychology, as soon as you say late payment, naturally businesses think negative, bad. And the whole job I'm trying to do is to get the country to a state of prompt payment. So the way in which we're doing it, I run what is called an arm's length body. We're a small and mighty team, so we're currently 14 people. And when I came in, which is coming up to 12 months ago, I said to the team, right, we are on a mission. And the mission that we're on is how do we make life easier for small businesses by getting money moving quicker through the economy and into their hands. It won't surprise either of you to know that payment is quite a multi-layered issue. So businesses may not be getting paid because mistakes were made on the invoice. Maybe it is a bad culture in the supplier where they're trying to hold on to their cash. It could be you haven't sent it to the right place. So all of our work is essentially trying to address each of those layers. And really briefly, the way in which we do it, we have a casework team. So if a business is not getting paid, they can call us up and we can chase those payments. So in the last financial year, we retrieved just over £1.5 million worth of late invoices on behalf of small businesses, for which, of course, they were very grateful. On behalf of the Department for Business and Trade, we run something called the Fair Payment Code. So this is something that celebrates businesses who are paying on time. We've had a big push recently to try and get big companies signed up to that. So we've now got all of the major banks on the code. We've got the major 3 cloud accounting software providers on the code. So lots more activity to do on that. And then we produce, hopefully, quite a bit of content that helps businesses know their rights and figure out what they need to do when it comes to getting paid. And maybe we'll kind of talk about this sort of in this podcast is quite excitingly at the moment. We are taking a bill through Parliament. Well, the Department for Business and Trade is. So in the King's Speech, we had reference to a commercial payments bill, which will bring in new measures in the UK, moving the UK to 60-day maximum payment terms, which is incredible. 8% mandatory interest on late paid invoices. So the first reading was in the House of Lords a couple of weeks ago. So if we can get that through into legislation, it will make the UK the toughest out of the G7 when it comes to laws that tighten up on those who aren't paying on time. So lots of activity, but all with a view to kind of say, let's make sure that small businesses don't have to keep on chasing debt and get paid when they should be getting paid.
That's fantastic. Now you talk about obviously fair payment, prompt payment, so getting that wording right, which is actually key because you've got to take the large companies with you, because otherwise you're going to get pressure from them, especially the passage of the bill. I did a 10 or 11 bill, so I know what that's like. And so you want to make sure that you're going with the grain, taking them with you. Is that how you're going to, or the department's going to approach it and you're going to be chipping in, supporting?
Well, 100%. And in fact, because the bill is about to go into its second reading, what we've started to do in the office, because it's a department bill, but if it goes through, there will be more powers for the office to enact the measures that are coming through. So what we're starting to work on is for small businesses, we want to do lots of communications for small firms to know their rights. So when the bill comes in, that small firms will know, okay, this is what it means for me. And then for larger companies to get their house in order. So just to be prepared. And it's really interesting because since I've come in to role, most of the large businesses that I speak to, they want to do the right thing. They want to pay their suppliers on time because they know if they don't have happy suppliers, they don't have a very healthy business. And as I say, sometimes some of the friction is the process itself. So it can be maybe a big company has just changed their, accounts payable system and therefore it creates an issue. So I come to this from the vantage point of, I think most big businesses want to pay on time, and this legislation will hopefully kind of take that one step further. And so absolutely, Paul, it's a case of let's work together, because if we can get to a prompt payment culture, small businesses are happy because they get paid on time. They're therefore delivering great services to larger companies. And again, it goes back to that mission statement. We make life easier for everyone because we're literally getting the money moving.
Absolutely. And I should say for listeners that are not familiar with the parliamentary process, obviously King's Speech was at the state opening in Parliament, which just had. The King sits there reading the government's programme. First reading is just when they read the title of the bill. They just introduce it to Parliament. Second reading, which you just described, is actually when MPs they debate the principle of the bill before they go into the minutiae of it. So it's going to take a little while to get through. I mean, that's just Parliament. That's what happens. And then it needs to be enacted. So businesses shouldn't expect this to be happening overnight, but it's good. It's great that it's on its way. So well done on that. One of the things that I know Asad, and I'm not looking at him deliberately, but I know his ears would have absolutely pricked up on, was when you're talking about the money that you recover for companies as well. Because I wanted to ask you the question, if you are running a small business, it must be really difficult, especially, Asad's business or other people with SMEs, when they're working for big clients. Sometimes you're really worried about asking the question because, you haven't paid me, what's going on, for fear of losing other contracts. That's something that you're going to be...
Certainly, that is quite a grand reality of running a small business. And what you mentioned there, Emma, around working with strategic partners, which are ultimately global large businesses, being an SME, especially a smaller business, you would have that almost fear factor. Should I probe them? Is it too much? Am I starting to nag them? Because as a smaller business, you've got quite a bit of time. as opposed to being as part of a larger infrastructure as an individual. But what would you suggest on how smaller businesses should look at something like this? Is it something to be scared of, or is it more embrace the partnership and ask openly?
Well, so it's really interesting you say this, because Paul will recollect this, that actually the Office of the Small Business Commissioner was set up under the Conservative government back in 2017, still with the same remit it has today, which is let's get small businesses paid. One of the issues over the past 8 years has been that, understandably, small firms don't want to report their big clients and go public saying, my big client isn't paying on time. So this is almost another point of the legislation, is how do we shift the onus of reporting from the small firm onto the fact we just normalise prompt payment across the UK economy. So if we can do that from a national perspective, so again, it's kind of, as you can imagine, I go to some events at the moment where people are saying what we don't need is more legislation, regulation, admin. But of course, this is a pro-growth move, because it's saying let's set the right infrastructure in the UK where we get to a 60-day norm of maximum payment terms. So if we can get to that, every company will know we have to pay our suppliers within a maximum 60 days. So that shifts the onus a little bit from the small business, because the large company knows what the payment terms are from a legal perspective. But then also some of the new powers for the office is we would be able to investigate on an anonymous basis on behalf of small businesses. So very much the legislation is moving towards how do we take away that onus. However, what I would say is this is where technology comes in. We're on the Digital State podcast. We can't not talk about technology. I mentioned previously the big three cloud accounting partners, so Xero, Sage, Intuit. And they are building essentially invoice chasing agents into all of their products, AI enabled. So technology is playing a really big role in this. So if you're a business using any of those cloud accounting software and your invoices aren't getting paid, you can now set an AI agent to chase those invoices for you. So that's one thing that businesses are doing. And then the other thing is, this is where it comes into getting financial help. If you've got a bookkeeper, if you've got a credit controller, it depersonalizes what's going on. So it's not the founder asking the client to be paid on time, where it can then mess up with the relationship. It is quite rightly your internal finance function. So at Enterprise Nation, I had an amazing bookkeeper who acted as credit control. So when it escalated, I had to step in as the founder and say, come on, Company X, you really need to pay. But of course, to not damage that relationship, you can hopefully have somebody else do the chasing for you. So I'd say it's a mixture of technology, using it to its full potential. If you can get a bookkeeper or a financial controller in your business, delegate the responsibility to them, and then hopefully the legislation will kick in and do its work too.
So if you had a business, and let's hope Assad doesn't need it, but if you have a business that actually wants the support and help of the Office of Small Business Commissioner, what do they do? How do they get in touch?
Well, we're very active on social platforms. So we're across LinkedIn, all social platforms. But if you go onto our website, if you've got a case, you can literally fill in a form. The casework team are amazing. They deal, because if you can imagine, some businesses who come to us, and I see some of these communications, this is a business owner who's not getting paid. It has an impact on their mental health. It has an impact on their cash flow. We've had people who have said that because they're not getting paid, they can't take a salary, they can't pay their employees. So we have a very good casework team who know how to manage these cases with care and with delicacy, but also they're brilliant at then contacting the large company to say, come on, you need to pay on time. So yes, do contact us for that. But of course, Paul, also, if businesses are looking at getting on the Fair Payment Code, I mentioned before, we're doing a big push on getting big companies signed up, but businesses of all sizes can apply.
And that's voluntary.
It's a voluntary code, but if you're a small business that comes onto the Fair Payment Code, I know that lots of the topics you'll be talking about in future podcasts is procurement. I think it really helps if you're a business and you're pitching for government or public sector contracts. I think it really helps that if you're on the Fair Payment Code, then the public sector buyer knows this is a good business that pays on time.
Well, that's really good, because I mean, it's worth talking about procurement for technology, because this is one of the things that obviously I talked about, the fact that number one was all about cash flow, etc. Number two is about procurement. It's about how can small businesses get involved in larger businesses as well, which obviously is something else.
That's primary of the work that we're doing. We're partnered with a number of large organisations, and these topics around prompt payment, it's quite a big thing for us, but it does enable smaller businesses to work on larger public sector programs and contracts, where essentially, as a small business, you may be going for a couple of 100,000 pieces of work type of thing, and working with arm's length bodies or local councils where enabling that. But we are very lucky, I guess, in the respect that we've made them relationships. And some of the clients that we can very happily mention that we're working with are central government, large, huge infrastructure organizations, where it's often difficult for small businesses to try and get in direct or try to get in from day one. Yeah, certainly, I'd say on that ball.
And what do you think, Emma, in terms of your broader experience in working with smaller businesses about, obviously we've got the Procurement Act, which although it was, a couple of years ago now, it's only really just coming into form now, having an effect now. Is there any more that we can look at to support SMEs coming into procurement, especially for government, local government and other public sector areas?
I think there's so much more we can do. And Paul, you may remember this, but years ago when Matt Hancock was Minister for Cabinet Office, I was for a couple of years the SME Crown representative. So Matt Hancock at the time had said, I want £1 in every 3 spent with small businesses. And so I kind of came in and again, went round the UK kind of saying to small businesses, come on, consider government as one of your clients. I think there is so much more that we can do on a couple of levels. One is encouraging small businesses to think about selling to the public sector. Still to this day, and it was quite a few years ago when I held that SME Crown rep role, but I still hear the same things today, that if you say to a small business, come on, think about selling to central government, they will immediately say, too difficult, too many forms to fill in. It's really tough to get, and you've just kind of referred to this, Asad, it's really tough to get your first contract because you have to show credibility. Yeah. So getting that first one, you kind of need a buyer to take a bit of a punt on you. Once you've got your first contract, then of course it builds credibility. So there's something around how do we encourage more small firms to think about either selling direct to government or indeed via strategic suppliers. And I'm a big champion actually for saying to small businesses, if you don't want to do the admin of applying and pitching and writing all the forms, go in via a strategic supplier. Because hopefully they've got teams who can write these bids and are very professional at doing it. You focus as the SME on doing the thing that you do really well. And back to payment, one thing that government's saying now is the payment terms and conditions that government has with tier 1 contractors, they have to be cascaded down to other suppliers. So hopefully, if you're an SME selling into government, either direct or indirect, you're going to get paid pretty quick.
I think it's a really good point there, Emma, because as a small business, and you mentioned this earlier, the responsibility is also on the small business to make sure that you are doing the right thing and following the governance processes of that strategic supplier, because it's no good sending invoices to 10 different emails and then expecting all of them to be paid promptly, because you do need to follow their process and mirror that essentially. But that's been extremely helpful for us so far, I must say, with the work that we're doing, because although it's at 60-day, where we're sort of sitting on 30 days at the moment, and it does help us cash flow working with the strategic suppliers, then I genuinely mean that.
Now, with Digital State looks at 2 things in terms of technology. It looks at, Assad is obviously an SME that's actually putting technology right in the heart of government. But what more do you think technology, in a wider sense, can help SMEs access those procurement things? That's streamlining some of these things, these problems that we've been outlining.
Absolutely. Well, I think technology can help small businesses do a whole load of things.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, I sat on something called the Digital Adoption Task Force that looked at how do we encourage small firms, because bless them, they're busy, they've got lots of different priorities. How do we encourage them to think about digital?
They're working for their business, not on their business.
In the business, not on the business.
Exactly.
I'm a big, and small businesses have got so much going on at the moment. So I understand why many of them are in the detail. But actually, this is kind of one thing. When I look at digital adoption in the round, I think there's a couple of things going on. One, at a national level, you're seeing government force or nudge, depending on which word you would want to use, small businesses down a digital adoption route through things like making tax digital. E-invoicing is going to be mandated from 2029. So this is forcing small businesses to say, okay, I have to use some digital technology in order to comply with what is going to be a national government mandate. So that is kind of happening at a national level. Another thing which I'm really loving, and I've kind of mentioned this already, is the huge tech companies who produce the products that small businesses are using, whether it be cloud accounting, whether it be CRM systems, whether it be sales software, they are building new product developments and AI into existing products. And for me, that's great because it's enabling small businesses to be more effective without necessarily having to go and look out and learn anything new because the product is doing the work for them.
Yeah.
Where I think we could go further, and this is one thing I hear from small businesses all the time, is in the personalization of what will have the greatest impact for a business. Because depending on what you sell to whom as a small firm, different digital solutions are going to have a different impact on you. And the one thing, and again, on the Digital Adoption Task Force, we looked at in quite detail to say, could we do it in the UK? And I think we need to go further on this, is how, with those busy business owners, how do you get them connected to say, right, for you, business A, this kind of software has proven to have this kind of impact on companies that look like yours. So if this is the kind of thing, here's what we recommend as a product, and then getting advice on how to properly implement it in a business. So I think if we can get personalization of recommendations of what businesses need, and then ideally match them with trusted digital advisors who can help, then you get the full benefit of the right product in the right business and hopefully being used in the right way to get the results.
That's really interesting because I think the key to that is, I was going to ask you about AI because you can't not talk about AI in any technology thing, I'm afraid, but you know, about the take up of AI. But it's interesting what you say about actually having it built into familiar products. So actually the SMEs aren't having to necessarily come up with a dedicated AI strategy that's being curated for them by companies that they already trust.
Absolutely. And I go back to, and it's kind of like a motto that's in my head every day, of this concept of how do we make life easier for small businesses? So how do we open up contracts for them, reduce the amount of friction? And of course, technology product providers are brilliant at doing this. If you look at fintech companies in the UK, they are also driven by effortless products for their customers where their customers don't have to think. And the brilliance of that is if I'm the customer, the small business, I don't have to think because the product is doing the thinking for me. So great, that's saving my time. But if you think about it as the product provider, they're also happy because they get sticky customers. So they get people using the product, using it to its full benefit, and therefore, of course, they stay as a customer. So this is benefiting both. The big tech providers benefit because if their product is great, the customers are going to want to use it. But yeah, for small businesses, this is really benefiting them. They don't have to think. It's coming to them in great product development. But in a way, that's why it makes it even more important that we get the right small business using the right product in the first place.
I mean, it's interesting, wasn't it? So we, if you remember, did a training session for an organisation a little while ago. Don't need to name them, but they actually sort of were looking for an AI strategy, and I brought in Assad as the expert in the area about doing all this sort of stuff. But actually, it turns out they didn't really know. They knew they wanted some AI into it, but they didn't really know what they were, what they needed at the time.
Yeah, certainly. Just on a point there, just to address that, because if it sounds like the big tech product providers are making the admin behind the functions within a small business a lot easier, and that can be, you know, they say often make the smallest things make the biggest impact, but that's one of the biggest things that will exemplify for a smaller organization. Around AI, I think lots of people and organizations feel like they need a strategy, but it's simple usage, and that can be built into your Copilot these days. How well are you using that? I think that's what it really boils down to, because, again, on that example, Paul, where they were ready for AI, they didn't know what exactly they needed to use it for, and just that 90-minute session helped unearth some of them topics for them where they did just go back and say, oh, we've already got the thing, we just need to sort of learn how to use it. And that was the whole finding that we had in quite a big company as well.
I mean, I think, you know, my takeaway whenever I do any of that sort of training is always remember AI is basically like an intern. If you're using it in that large language model style thing, just treat it like an intern, which is a lot of human involvement that's needed. It will come back, it'll be eager beaver, but it'll make a lot of mistakes.
Absolutely.
You need to be there. Don't just treat it like a tool. Don't just treat it as a substitute for things. Not yet, anyway. We don't know what's coming down the line. That's subject to a whole another conversation. But then I wanted to ask you just very quickly before we're going to move on to the quick fire round. So don't. We are
In the hot seat
we're going to get you in the hot
quite
seat, and
literally.
it literally is very hot at the moment. But how do you think this better digital uptake is going to help UK growth? Because that's something, again, government talks about growth. I think they're scrabbling around sometimes for how to achieve that. To be fair, a lot of people are. It's not just government. But what do you think technology and better digital uptake can do to compete with other countries as well?
Well, I don't want to oversimplify this, but I think a lot about growth. And Paul, you will have watched this, but coming up to a year ago, the Prime Minister launched a small business plan, which is a document of 200 measures. I don't expect small businesses to have read it, but when I kind of read it, I think you can summarise what is being attempted here with three things that small businesses are kind of having done unto them, but hopefully, they're kind of wanting. One is, how do we get growth from access to new contracts? And we've spoken about procurement. So small businesses grow if they win more work. So that is things like selling more to government, SME procurement, new export markets, so making the most of all these fair trade deals. Digital technology can help with all of that. So if you're a small business that's using a CRM system, it has global potential. If you're a small business selling on an existing digital platform, you can immediately go into global markets. So digital technology helps you win more contracts, whether it be social platforms or sales platforms. And small businesses want to win contracts and they want less friction in their life. So this is all of the stuff we've spoken about: payments, reducing admin time. Digital technology can help with all of that. So digital can help you reach more customers quicker in a bigger area. Digital technology can help reduce the time that you spend on stuff that you shouldn't be spending it on. And that's how I think we get growth. And I know it sounds really basic, but I think it's extra sales with less friction equals growth. And the final thing I would say, and this isn't really a digital point, this is more of a human point, is I think small businesses want to achieve all of this in an environment that celebrates and recognises them. And so optimism, positivity, and I think that's probably kind of what we need a bit more of. That's not necessarily that digital can help that, but I think more use cases showing here is how digital technology helped this company to grow, celebrating digital businesses that are doing well. I think the more that we can do of the celebration and shouting from the rooftops the incredible things that small businesses are doing, I think that just then kind of gives us the wrapper. So more sales, less friction, all of it enabled by digital technology, but then let's celebrate the wins in that.
I'm going to come back to optimism just for one last time, one last turn of the wheel in a second. But now the big quick fire round. So just don't think too heavy, because you know it all anyway, Emma. Of your years of experience. What's your best piece of business advice?
I would say it's not really business advice. It's more rounded advice. Treat other people how you'd want to be treated yourself.
Yeah, fantastic. Overrated business buzzword.
Growth hacking.
Growth hacking.
I don't like that term.
I haven't even come across that.
I don't think you can hack your way to
actually, no,
growth. That's why I'm not a fan of it.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I have. So AI, we've talked a bit about it, but business, biggest opportunity or biggest distraction?
Opportunity.
Fantastic. And what government process would you abolish tomorrow? Business oriented. I know there'd be a long list otherwise.
What one thing would I abolish? Can I slightly pivot that and say, rather than abolish something, to create? Is I would love to see in the UK, when I go around and talk to small businesses, they tell me about regulations that are really bothering them, whether it be when you put in windows, you need certain certificates, or if you're doing a hospitality business and you need alcohol licenses. I would love for us to set up where you can report a regulation.
Good.
And so that's what I'd love. So report it in, and then everyone across government looks at this to say, is it outdated?
Well, that's good, because look, I always say good regulation is actually gives confidence for customers and businesses.
Absolutely.
Bad regulation is just a cost of business. So spot on, like that. So one thing all small businesses should automate.
Oh, their accounting.
Good. Get that done. And what is your preference? A coffee morning, a coffee meeting, or Zoom or Teams meeting?
I'm going to go for Zoom or Teams.
Oh, you're efficient. No, you see, I like in person, but We can't have a coffee on a hot day like this. And what is the most important quality that either there or you can develop as an entrepreneur?
If I'm allowed to, I think it's the ability to sell, and a word that's being used a lot at the moment, resilience, the ability to just keep on selling and getting up if times are tough. So getting out to market and then the ability to keep going.
That's the old Edison theory, isn't it? It's lots of times you're going to fail. You just need to
keep getting up.
Absolutely, keep getting away. And I said I was going to come back to optimism. Final question, just a big $1 million question. What gives you optimism about the UK? It keeps you optimistic about UK business landscape, especially for small businesses at this moment in time.
The business owners themselves. So they are the ones that give me optimism because, and it goes back to what we've just said, is they have challenges thrown at them all the time, bless them. And this is not just in the past 12 months. Of course, they've had it, COVID, cost of trading challenges, Brexit. They've just had these challenges and crises coming at them. And they give me hope because these incredible people do get up every day and they do think about AI and they think about digital and they think about where their next sale is going to come from. If we can keep that group motivated, celebrated, rewarded, that's what gives me hope that the UK is still going to be a great enterprising nation and a great place to start and grow a business.
And it always has been a great enterprising nation. You're absolutely right. Hence the name Enterprise Nation.
Absolutely.
I see what you did there all those years ago. And thank you, Emma. That's really kind. It's great to go through that. And I think what you've demonstrated is that there is, you share that passion. I share that passion of small business leaders, of entrepreneurs. It was the one thing when I was, there was lots of things I really enjoyed about being a minister, but I used to bounce off the walls when I used to hear the stories of young people, especially, who've either setting up a business or pivoting from one business to another. And it just shows that SMEs still are central to our nation's growth. And I hope that we can, through this podcast, through other discussions, through your work, Emma, find other ways that government can really know when to lean into business, when to get out of the way of business, and to support those businesses to growth, but using technology right at the heart of it as well.
In future episodes, we'll discuss these things around AI adoption, go deeper into procurement, because just as Emma listed out today, what the process is for organizations to report some payment issues to the office for the Small Commissioner of Business Office, we'll highlight on different topics as well that are also very useful for SME organizations, and hopefully help them, even if it's just by 1% in their growth.
Absolutely. Well, look, I hope you've enjoyed listening and watching the podcast, The Digital State. I hope you'll actually subscribe, you'll share, you'll recommend to your friends as well. And by the way, if you have thoughts of what you want to discuss, you want us to discuss in this sort of informal fireside chat way, or you've got some guests that you think would be really good to hear from, please do let us know. You can find the podcast in your normal place that you find podcasts, but make sure that you send a link on to other people as well. But for the moment, thank you again, Emma. Always good to see Asad.